Hello. The big news this week, Customer.io announced they had crossed the $100 million annual recurring revenue threshold, which is super exciting. I look forward to getting into more of that. And then while last week I kind of teased a few of the Bend Venture Conference winners, now I have the official announcement and would like to share more of those winners with you. I also just want to say the camera crashed while I recorded this the first time. So this is my second time through, so it may be more lickety split than you're used to because I've already said all this stuff once. Okay, cool. Quickly, before we get into those big stories, interesting story from the information about SoftBank. Yes, that SoftBank, the one that plowed like $16 billion into WeWork. Apparently, they were looking at Agility Robotics, which is down in the Corvallis area, based on some technology that came out of OSU, Oregon State University. That company builds humanoid robots, and SoftBank had been looking for some investment acquisition in humanoid robots. So apparently they may have been considering acquiring Agility Robotics for about $1 billion. There was somewhere in the neighborhood of 900 million to $1 billion was what the rumor said. But as it turns out, that acquisition did not go through. What SoftBank chose to do instead was invest in Agility Robotics. So they are still independent, still growing, still building their humanoid robots and continuing that kind of stuff. But just an interesting little segment there with the potential acquisition and what SoftBank valued Agility Robotics at. There were a couple of good posts that I think it's worth your time to read. I will link them up. Speaking of robots, Duncan Miller from Rose City Robotics had a great piece on kind of a perspective on venture capital. And then Paul O'Brien, the startup economist, had an interesting kind of hot take on VC spend in particular communities. And, a lot of people will complain that there's not enough venture capital here. Well, he took kind of a converse perspective on that to say, maybe there just aren't enough venture scale startups. Maybe it's not the VC's fault. Maybe it's the fault that there aren't venture scale companies, and that state level governments, city level governments might not understand that dynamic so clearly. So he was trying to put a kind of sharper perspective on that understanding for government. So I think that's an interesting piece. I think it's well worth you reading that and perhaps commenting on that if you have a perspective. And then finally, our friends at Central Office. Central Office, the homegrown co-working space that started in the Pearl and has several places in Portland, one in Lake Oswego, some in LA, one in Seattle, maybe some in Seattle. Anyway, the big announcement from Central is they're opening their first San Francisco location, which is interesting in that I know a lot of Portland people spend time down in SF, either for fundraising or otherwise, but that makes an interesting potential landing spot for people. So like if you're already at Central in Portland, then you may also have a place to sit in San Francisco and vice versa. Maybe we get some more San Francisco people co-working out of Portland because there is that availability of that resource. So congratulations to our friends at Central Office for opening their first San Francisco spot. And I look forward to seeing what that does to the dynamic around here between San Francisco and Portland. Okay, let's talk about Customer.io hitting $100 million ARR, annual recurring revenue, for those of you who don't like the acronyms. First and foremost, full disclosure, I am an investor in Customer.io, and I laugh about it because this was one of those regulation crowdfunding things that you could participate in that they ran through Republic, which is very serious. Just my investment was not that serious. In fact, it was 1/1,000,000th of their annual recurring revenue. So not a huge stake having Customer.io, but I just wanted to give you the full disclosure before I got into this. Okay, why am I excited about this? Well, first, I remember meeting Colin way back in the day. Colin is the CEO and co-founder, and I remember meeting him at Cloudability. Cloudability was a Pi alum that stayed after their class for a while in our space, kind of served as mentors in residence. And then they moved into a new space, which was their office. And they had extra space. And I think Colin and his team wound up crashing there for a while back when people used to use office space a little bit differently. But so I saw Customer.io in its earliest days and have kept an eye on it, even though it's kind of been one of those quiet Portland startups. The aggressive humility. People are just building their thing. It's not that big a deal. And now suddenly they're at 100 million ARR. And I'm just glad they made some noise about it. I know Customer.io has been doing well. I know they've taken additional investment from some other local folks, and they've just been quietly building this amazing company. I'm just happy they celebrated this milestone with us and let us know that they've achieved this level of growth. It's nice to see a Portland startup doing that. And so I wanted to take the time to just highlight that. I'll link up their posts so you can hear more about what their plans are. I think it's really nice that they kind of said, this isn't a finish line. This is just the starting line for the next stage of our company. They kind of outlined some of the things they were going to try and do, what more they were going to try and do with AI. And if you're not familiar with Customer.io and what they do, let me read this specific description so that I don't mess it up. They use first-party data to help folks better understand and support their customers. So taking all this data and helping you better understand the channels your customers use, where there's the most success with those customers, communications that they tend to respond to or those that they don't, all of those data points when they hit your website, all that kind of stuff, just helps give you a better, well-rounded picture of your customers thanks to the data that they're able to provide for each of these customers. So super interesting, like really in the weeds kind of data analysis stuff, but really cool and really valuable and obviously a lot of satisfied customers for them. So congratulations to Customer.io on hitting 100 million ARR. I'm looking forward to where you go from here. Bend Venture Conference winners. I teased a couple of them last week because folks provided some information for me. I didn't have the complete list. I let you know that it was only a partial list or the unofficial list for BVC winners. Now I have the full list. Bend Venture Conference has released the official winners list. So what I would like to do is share not only the winners, but what size of check they got from BVC. Cool? Cool. Let's go. So the early stage winners, Toastware out of Bend, won $25K. Our perennial mention here on the show, Yak out of Portland, won $15K. SoCo Life out of Eugene, I saw them at that Launch Oregon event I went to a few weeks back that I told you about down in Eugene. I had the hat for it and everything. They walked away with $5K. Growth stage startups, Rapta out of Tigard walked away with $110,500. Photon Marine out of Portland walked away with $65,000. Bold Reuse out of Portland, $50,000. And the only out-of-state winner was Marine Situ out of Seattle, Washington, that walked away with $32,500. So that's super interesting to me. Some years we see competitors from all over. This time around, all but one were Oregon companies. So that says something about the type of deal flow that Bend Venture Conference saw this year. A lot of local activity, not as much stuff outside of the region. We'll have to see if that's a growing trend or just kind of a one-off deal. I will say that for the early stage specifically, they were requiring the early stage startups to be from Oregon. So that would have been only Oregon companies. But of the growth stage, it's interesting to see that 3 of the 4 are Oregon companies as well. So those are the finalists for Bend Venture Conference 2025. That one is put to bed and all done. I will start talking about BVC, probably mid-year in 2026 when it's time for you to apply if you'd like to participate in BVC. But for now, congratulations to all the people who participated, all the companies who pitched, and thanks again to the folks in Bend for hosting Bend Venture Conference. Okay, speaking of venture capital and investing, our friends at Oregon Venture Fund are raising their next annual fund, and that's where you come in. If you're an accredited investor, that is, you make more than $200,000 a year, or your household makes more than $300,000 a year, or if your net worth is more than $1 million, except for your primary residence, so you don't get to count your residence as part of that net worth. But if it's over $1 million, then congratulations. You're an accredited investor. You can invest in startups, and you can also invest in Oregon Venture Fund. So their model, traditionally, they started as kind of this aggregated angel group. So that's what this fund is. So each year you have the opportunity to buy in to be part of that year's fund. That's the opportunity you have right now. Now, they also now have a traditional venture fund that they raise and then use, I believe, for follow-on investments, but they may also use for initial investments. But this is the original model for what was Oregon Angel Fund, now is Oregon Venture Fund, is this annual fund that you have the opportunity to re-up every year or participate in each year. So if that's of interest to you, if you've wanted to be involved in more deal flow in Oregon, if you're looking for more like peer-to-peer support in terms of being an angel or engaging with startups and investing in startups, or maybe you just want to learn more about due diligence and see how that whole thing is done. So if that's something that's interesting to you, I suggest you move quickly. I'll link it up, and I look forward to potentially seeing you as a new member of Oregon Venture Fund. Okay, speaking of organizations restarting or new starts from an existing organization, our friends at Oregon Startup Center have kind of rebooted the program, and it's because they're under new leadership. So Jim McCrate retired, Jim Chi joined as the executive director, and he's kind of reformatted, retooled Oregon Startup Center, which is out in Beaverton, to really begin to become the hub of West Side activity around startups. Their primary program over the years has been the Beaverton Startup Challenge, which was an application-based program where you'd apply as a startup. They would select a few companies, give you some capital as well as workspace and mentorship and all those kind of things. I believe that will remain part of their offering. The Beaverton Startup Challenge has been around for a while, and I think people kind of expect it to continue. But the other part of it that I found interesting, I ran into Jim at BBC, is they're working on also a nonprofit accelerator program as part of the Oregon Startup Center. So not only carrying forward some of the more traditional programming, but also innovating and looking for new ways that organization can be impactful. I just have a high level understanding of it. They had the grand opening this week. The mayor came out, said a few words, I believe, but I'm going to try and grab some, more time with Jim and hear more about his vision and strategy for the Oregon Startup Center going forward. And of course, anytime they have applications available for startups, I will make sure to let you know. Remember a few weeks back when I was talking about North Bank Innovations out of Vancouver, Washington, starting a new incubator in the Vic, which is a massive redevelopment of I believe it's the old HP campus in Vancouver. Anyway, they kind of launched it, did the launch party, but now they're ready to start taking residents. And then there are a couple different ways at a couple different price points that you can participate in North Bank Innovations at the Vic. One is kind of traditional co-working, where you get a desk and, access to a few accoutrements of the space, but it's a limited window. Like you don't have 24/7 access. You have like whatever, morning to evening kind of access. And then they'll probably do events there and stuff that you'll be included in, like a typical co-working space. So there's that part of it. But then there's the more intensive part of it, which is really designed to be more of that incubator support for startup companies that, include programming and mentorship and 24/7 access, and also probably some, collegial collaborative things among the startups that are in there. I don't know. I'm just making this stuff up as I go along. I haven't talked to Dave about what is really going on there, but just like I need to catch up with Jim, I'll need to catch up with Dave Barkas to hear his bigger vision, his refined vision now that the space is being activated, what he's doing there, what the strategy is, what types of startups they're looking for. Obviously, if you're in Vancouver and are building a startup, I suggest you reach out to them. But I will get more details on it. I will share those details with you as soon as I have them. But if you're hot to trot and ready to go and you're looking for that co-working space in Vancouver, Washington, I highly suggest you reach out to North Bank Innovations at the Vic. Okay, that's it for this week. I'm like, I had to record this twice, and my voice is not happy with me, but we're now at the point where we talk about secrets. It's just you and me. Everybody else is gone. Like, it's just you and me, so just chill, hang out, grab a beverage. Just wanted to share a few secrets of what happened this week. The week kind of flew by. I talked to a number of founders, a few pylons I had the chance to chat with. And that's always good, catching up with mentors and startup founders and that kind of thing. Lots of exciting stuff going on in town. A cool new startup, obviously leveraging AI from a pylon that was super impressive and seems to be gaining some traction and that kind of thing. So that's always good to hear, and I'm always happy to see that. I had the opportunity to sit in on a discussion of some legislation supporting smaller local journalism and content creation and those kind of things, and how the state is looking to prevent the loss of more local news organizations or regional news organizations. I'm not a journalist, so like I was just listening in from an information standpoint. Like, I create content, but I'm definitely not a journalist. But there are a number of journalists who are struggling to figure out how to make a living doing what they do and providing a very important resource to towns and cities and counties and regions. And so I'm really curious to see where this state legislation goes and if it can potentially be a viable means of at least providing some minimal support to these publications to ensure that we still have access to on the ground news at a local level. So really glad to see that. I kind of, I know I talk about, oh, I'm thinking about doing this or thinking about doing that. This week, I actually was like, no, that's something I need to do. So back in the day, this is not a reboot of something we used to do. I'm just saying, as an analogy, back in the day, used to work with a group of folks and we did this thing called Meet the Startup, which was a short video interview, face-to-face. We would sit down with them, and there was a lot of logistics and planning and those kind of things. So I don't really want to go back to exactly Meet the Startup format. But what I did appreciate about it, and what I think the people who watched and participated appreciated about it, was you were hearing startup stories directly from the founders themselves. And so that's always kind of been at the back of my head, that maybe that's something that we need. Like, it's all well and good that I sit here and talk to you and tell you about all the news happening in the community, but wouldn't it be nice to hear directly from those founders? And I'm not talking long con. Like, long con, I still like that format, and I still want to record more long con bits, but it is this logistical nightmare. I knew it would be, but it just is. It's like, align schedules and make sure all the tech is there and all the tech works, and then make sure that we don't have to change or switch or all that kind of thing. And then an hour and a half of recording or 2 hours of recording, and then coming back and then editing and making sure all that stuff's straight. It's just it's a lot. And since it's just a hobby, the long con has a lot of friction associated with it. I think it's valuable. I think I want to talk to a lot more people, but I need to figure out how to make it manageable. With this concept that I'm thinking of, it will be very much virtual. So I'm thinking it's just going to be like setting up calls with founders, knock it out in like 15 or 20 minutes, chat with them about what they're building, why they're building, what the inspiration was, what they're hoping to do. And in that way, get to introduce you to a bunch more startups here in Portland, and you get to hear from those founders about the stuff that they're building like we used to do with Meet the Startup. So I haven't really broadcast this yet. I haven't made a big deal of it, but I did throw together a form, an expression of interest form. So if you would like to chat with me about the startup that you're building, and remember, by startup, I mean a product-based company that has the potential for venture scale, whether that company is pursuing venture capital or not. So product-based companies that have the potential for exponential scale. Those are the folks I'm interested in chatting with. Won't take a ton of your time. Not a huge gotcha thing. It's really just opening up the platform to celebrate what you're building and promote your company and promote you and all that good stuff. If that sounds interesting to you and you just like, yeah, maybe I'd like to hear more. Maybe I'd like to do that. No commitment. Just fill out the form and we'll see if there's some opportunities that pop up immediately. Again, preference will be given to companies in Oregon or Southwest Washington. Happy to take any companies in the region that I typically cover. And who knows, maybe if we get interest from outside the region, I'll share some of those startups too, because I think that could be valuable to you to give you comparatives or like a better understanding of what's happening outside of the region as well. So I'm kind of excited to get going on that. I feel like that is something that is possible to do. It's attainable. It's not a lot of friction and logistics to get it done. It's basically just like sit here, like I sit here and chat with somebody for a few minutes, record it and give it to you. Seems pretty straightforward. We'll see if that's the case. So startup founder, if you're a startup founder, if you know a startup founder, if you work at a startup and you're here in the region, even though the startup is not, and you can talk on behalf of that startup, you're good too. You should participate as well. Let's see what kind of startups we're able to highlight here in the region by having those conversations. I look forward to chatting with you. So get that form submitted. It's linked up down there. Submit that form, and I look forward to hearing more from you. All right. It's supposed to be really weird weather this weekend, really stormy. Batten down your hatches, charge all your devices, because I don't want the show cutting out mid-show, or like if you have to go back and find something, or if you have to jump to a website, I want your device to have plenty of battery power to do that. I hope it's uneventful. I hope this is just weather hysteria, but who knows? Okay, hang in there. And until we get the chance to chat again, please keep up the good work.